FantasyPoints.com. We are back with another episode of Film vs. Analytics on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. Each day we're breaking down a new rookie based on the Dynasty ADP. We're battling them out, Film vs. Analytics. I'm your host, Brett Whitefield. I am the resident film expert. I'm also the COO of Fantasy Points. I will be joined by Scott Barrett, the best analytical mind in all of football. He's the CEO of FantasyPoints.com. Today, we're breaking down the 108, Mr. Brock Bowers, tight end from Georgia. Without further ado, let's run it.
I'm excited to talk about Bowers. Clearly,
I like Bowers.
I love Bowers.
You love Bowers? I'm surprised.
How are you? I'm the analytics guy, and the numbers
I
are
I
all off the
know.
charts.
Well, there's some numbers that are a little concerning that I think you'll probably get into. I don't want to steal your thunder though, so I'm not
All
going to
right,
go
yeah.
there.
Don't steal my thunder.
I'll
What are you
let you
doing?
go there.
All right.
But Brock Bowers has been what the consensus tight end one in this class since he was born, probably. So
Yeah,
somewhere like maybe year 5, his parents realized, all right, well, Scott,
good
you being
deal.
the resident analytics guy, why don't we start with you? You break down Bowers from a numbers perspective.
Second best tight end prospect in a decade. You'll see this on the screen right now. Insane age adjusted production, insane career production. Second best tight end prospect in a decade, definitively in my estimation. If I put him into my wide receiver model, he'd rank third best, ahead of Rome Odunze. Um, he led Georgia in receiving yards in 3 straight seasons, smashing day 2 receivers like Lad McConkey, Darnell Washington, Jermaine Burton, Adonai Mitchell. He took his yards per game average up to 90.8 last year, right before an injury, which required tightrope surgery. And then he came back, I think, like 28 days after that, which is like kind of freakish. But yeah, so 90.8 yards per game prior to that. Career 19 carries, 193 rushing yards, 5 rushing touchdowns, which is just insane. He had more career college rushing touchdowns than Kene Nwangwu, who plays for the Vikings. Um, Basically, you should just like read my article when it comes out. Like, I have a dank stats section for Brock Bowers. I'm the dank stats guy, and there's each one is I just like home run. I killed it. Oh, insane dank stats. Here's just a few of them. Since 2015, only 2 tight ends have ever cleared at 2.75 yards per route run in a single season. Kyle Pitts in 2020, Brock Bowers in 2021. Before his injury against Vanderbilt last year, 3.15 also would have cleared it again. Georgia passers had a near perfect pass rating when targeting him throughout his career. I think it was like 50 points higher when targeting him versus all other Georgia receivers. And again, remember, there's some great day 1, day 2 wide receiver prospects on that team. Among all wide receivers in the class, he ranks second in career yards per target. The player ahead of him, Jermaine Burton, had twice his ADOT. If you exclude screens, Bowers easily would have led the class in career yards per target. Still have to dive into depth adjusted yards per target, but like might be the best player ever by that stat. We'll see. Freakishly elite after the catch by yards after the catch per reception, missed tackles forced per reception. The guy had 3 more career 100-yard receiving games than Lad McConkey, Roman Wilson, and Adonai Mitchell combined. You want to talk concerns? You have to get pretty nitpicky here, but the concern with his profile is screens. He's a bit of a screen merchant. I don't know how much it matters a lot for wide receivers. I don't know how much it matters for tight ends, but here's the key stat. He'd become the first tight end ever drafted since 2014 to see over 35% of his career catches coming on screens. So that's the big concern. I will just say you can remove screens. He looks even better. Like his yards after the catch per reception is still freakishly elite. His yards per target average jumps above Burton for best of any player in this class. But it is something to think about. It's like, maybe he's not the polished route runner we think he is. Um, and then the other point is just like, what would his comp be? Is he more on the Travis Kelce spectrum or is he more on the George Kittle spectrum? Because that's the comp I keep hearing. Maybe actually I keep hearing it from you. But the concern there is like Travis Kelsey is just at a massive inherent fantasy advantage relative to Kittle because he's one of those wide receivers masquerading as a tight end. He doesn't spend as much time blocking or in line. He's really just like running a route on 90+% of dropbacks and that's just, in any given season, Kelsey's running 200 plus more routes than a George Kittle, and that's just a way bigger advantage for fantasy. So those would be my only two nitpicky concerns. Um, I think in a tight end premium league, there's maybe only two non-quarterbacks I'd take ahead of him. Um, in a you know typical league, you could just bump him down because the position's not as valuable. But I feel awesome, feel really good about Bowers, a player I love. Don't break my heart, Brett. Let's hear what you have to say.
I think you covered it. No, I'm kidding. So Brock Bowers, listen, you mentioned the screen stuff, the screen merchant stuff. Here's the thing, that's not a bad thing, right? He's an elite run after catch player. Like I'm talking elite, and I wish there was a better word to describe it than elite, but there really isn't. He's superb. He's excellent, extraordinary, whatever. He's awesome. Probably the best run after catch tight end I've seen since you already mentioned him, George Kittle. And that is my comp for him. I know I usually throw my comp out at the end, but since we're already there, you already invoked the name. Style comp is George Kittle. When I watch Brock Bowers and I watch him after the catch, he runs with his hair on fire like George Kittle does. He plays with an insane amount of intensity, physical strength that I'm going to dominate you no matter what. Shoot, some of the B-roll clips Trey has played today during the show, you see Brock Bowers just throwing guys off of him at will. This is the same way George Kittle runs. He's physical, he's violent, he's aggressive. But that's not the only thing he does well. And I know he didn't have a lot of opportunities to run a legit route tree, but what you see is a guy with the physical traits to be an excellent route runner. And he can eventually turn himself into a mismatch weapon. And maybe he falls somewhere on the Travis Kelsey spectrum at some point in his career. That's not right now. He's got some work to do, but the physical traits are all there for him to be an excellent route runner. I also see a guy with great hands technique, and I know drops are probably overrated in the projection community. I don't think NFL teams care as much about drops as you know, the guys grading tape on Twitter.com or X.com. But his hands technique is awesome, and I think he's going to have trust with his quarterback early on. He strikes the ball really well with a diamond technique. He's got a lot of urgency securing the ball to his frame. He does really good at the contact window as well. I know his contested catch volume wasn't high enough to really, make clear cut stances, but when you see him in that contact window, he does a really good job keeping defenders away. He's not moved off his spot. For a tight end, that is immensely important because Scott, where are tight ends catching the ball more often than not? The middle of the field. What is going on in the middle of the field? A lot of traffic, a lot of congestion. He's going to have to catch the ball in traffic if he's going to, prove out his ADP. So, only real knock on Bowers to me is he just needs to get a little bit better as a blocker. If he wants to become an every down player early on in his career, he's just got to get a little bit better. Now, I love him on split flow, split zone type stuff. He's great getting to the second level and digging out linebackers, but at the point of attack and gap concepts or even, connected as the nub tight end and like outside zone, I think he struggles a little bit at the point of attack. He doesn't have a lot of play strength there. He is an undersized guy, right? He's what, 6'3", 240. Um, real nitpicky concern, Scott, is catch radius might not be great. He's got shorter arms. He is of diminutive stature. I do think he has the athleticism to make up for that a lot. You see some pretty good ball skills, and he's got an ability to make adjustments to the ball. There's one of him getting the ball thrown behind him right there, so that case in point. But I do think catch radius could also be a slight issue. Maybe this isn't a guy you're expecting to go win 50-50 balls often in the red zone, which could nerve some tight end or some touchdown production. But either way, this guy he's a really good prospect. I wouldn't say he's my I think Kyle Pitts was a better prospect than Bowers, but I mean, shoot, compared to the stat class we had last year, I think Bowers would have ranked higher than all of them for me.
Yeah, you just mentioned red zone touchdowns. He had the second highest red zone target to touchdown conversion ratio as a freshman. The only season ranking above that was one season by Justin Jefferson. You mentioned the size. Last year, I wrote up like 3 paragraphs on why I wasn't worried about Sam Laporta's height when everyone else was. And now
Sure.
I don't have to say that. I can just say he's Sam Laporta sized, and everyone's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's not really
It's
that big of a deal."
you're not wrong with that. Like the new NFL, receivers are getting smaller, tight ends are getting smaller. That is true. Laporta's not the only one, right? I mean, we've had a lot of like Dalton Kincaid was small last year. Um,
Yeah.
all the guys in this draft are small. Michael Mayer wasn't nearly as big as we thought he was either. He came in at like 250 pounds. So I mean, that is the new wave NFL. Guys are a little bit smaller. That short area quickness is being prioritized a little bit more. So yeah, I don't necessarily have concerns with the size. Just thought it was worth mentioning.
Yeah, there is that picture of him next to Gronk, which, might have bumped him down a few spots by projected draft capital. But I mean, Gronk is one of one. You also mentioned as a criticism he can improve as a blocker. To me, that's kind of a good thing for fantasy. Like I don't want good blockers. I want bad
No, no,
blockers. I
no.
want you running a route.
Yeah, I disagree. You and I have debated this over and over, and I do think blocking, especially for fantasy, is important because here's what's going to happen if he can't block, Scott. If he's say he's just completely terrible at it, he can't block. He's not going to get on the field on first down. There's going to be a lot of second downs he's sitting, and guess what happens? Good teams throw the ball on first and second down, Scott. So if he's sitting on the bench, he ain't running routes. Obviously, you don't want him to turn into a pass protection maven, but you need the guy on the field for three downs to like you talked about Kelsey, route running like what 200 routes per year over George Kittle. Well, a lot of that is he's on the field for every snap. George Kittle's not necessarily on the field for every snap. They obviously run the ball a lot more too in San Francisco. But point being, Kelsey runs every route because he's on the field for every opportunity there is to run a route.
Yeah, there's a spectrum to it. It's if you're an every down player, I want you running routes and not blocking. But like
Sure, of course.
Bowers is so good as a receiver and projected to go top 12 in the draft that you're going to be an every down player. But when we talk about, the late day two tight ends, then yeah, blocking certainly matters and it is important because it gets you on the field and we want these guys on the field.
Yeah.
You also mentioned a little bit how the NFL is changing. You said, it's getting smaller and how good Bowers is over the middle of the field on these screens, these shallow targets. And so I'm thinking about the new rule change. No more hip drop tackles. And we talked about this and how this gives an advantage to tight ends
Yeah.
because for smaller defensive backs, it makes it much more difficult to tackle someone who's significantly bigger than you. So that looks like it's going to be a cheat code for Bowers at the next level. On top of that, the best career yards per route run against zone of any tight end ever, like insanely freakish, elite marks in that regard. The NFL has increased its rate of zone in each of the last 4 years. It keeps climbing upwards. Um, so that's another feather in the cap of Bowers. Just like the way the NFL is headed seems to fit perfectly for Bowers.
Agreed.
Um, one other knock I'm hearing from an NFL standpoint, less so fantasy standpoint, is just the devaluing of the position, and that's twofold. It's well, what you're paying wide receivers, it just makes more sense to get a wide receiver, which is true, except until we're talking about a second contract, in which case the wide receivers the tight ends putting up wide receiver production are then like immensely devalued and like become one of the best values in all of salary cap football. The second point is like the bust rate at the position. And Sam Laporta wasn't a round one pick last year. And look at it, Trey McBride wasn't was he a round three pick? The only thing I'll say about that is like I think the NFL is bad at tight ends, but like my model's really damn good. Like if you look at my track record, it's a lot better. Liked Isaiah Likely a lot more than everyone else. I think Hunter Bryant was a big miss, but we don't have to talk about him. And for you too, you comped him to George Kittle. I think the first phone call we ever had was, yeah, there's this tight end out of Iowa. Make sure you draft him in all of your rookie drafts. I think he's a round two talent. He ended up going round five, but so that's the any thoughts on that, Brett?
Yeah, I mean, everything you said about how he translates to the NFL right now, spot on. Totally agree. Your model does do a really good job with tight end. It's we usually see pretty eye to eye on tight ends actually, because I think what I see on tape, usually your model agrees with for the most part, outside of a few guys. And then lastly, I do think there's this element to it that's not really being talked about, but landing spot is important to maximize that ceiling. Because like if he lands in a spot with a really good creative offensive coordinator that knows how to use 12 personnel correctly, because ultimately with his size and his quickness, that short area quickness and explosiveness, like you want him to line up in the slot and you want to force defenses to adjust to you. That like when as an offense, when you can dictate the script, you're ahead of the game. And so Brock Bowers allows you to do that. He gets on the right team that's going to put him in 12 personnel where maybe he doesn't have to be the nub tight end at the point of attack on outside zone. That would be great, right? He's just playing in the slot and he's blocking from the slot on a run play. But then on those passing opportunities, he's getting those one-on-one matchups with crappy coverage linebackers or even, safeties that he can out physical at will. So there's an element of that where like landing spot is kind of going to be a little important. It's not the end of the world for him because he's that talented. But yeah, I mean, if he falls in the right spot, I think sky's the limit for this guy.
Yeah, I love it. So right now we're looking at Bowers as the 108 in rookie super flex drafts. And as much as you guys can tell, I clearly love Bowers. I think that's just about perfect for just, in a non tight end premium league, tight ends just aren't really that important. But if we're talking about tight end premium, like I'd be comfortable moving him up one spot, two spots. Um, just because I love this player so much and I feel so good about it. And tight end premium league, like tight ends are a massive cheat code. Like seems like every tight end premium league I'm in, the winner either had Travis Kelsey or Mark Andrews over the past X amount of years. So yeah, maybe 106. I don't think that's crazy. 107, but certainly no higher or lower than 108 in a non tight end premium draft. What do you think?
Yeah, I think 8 in a non-tight end premium is fine. You can make the argument, especially as we get into landing spots once the draft happens. I'm sure the board will change a little bit, but for tight end premium though, Scott, I'm willing to draft him before Drake May. For
Oh,
sure,
right,
for sure.
right.
Probably even willing to go maybe ahead of Neighbors in Odunze, possibly. Um,
Wow. Okay, so I'm not putting him above Neighbors. I could see myself taking him over May or McCarthy, your boy, sorry. It's just that you know, those guys just go earlier because of the importance of the position. So it really depends on need. Do you not need a quarterback? Then yeah, by all means.
of
But
course.
you could probably get by with like a small trade down. Like I just every single draft I'm seeing, the quarterbacks go first because
Yeah,
there's a dearth
scarcity.
of quarterbacks in fantasy right now worthy of,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I like it.
Awesome. Well, there it is. Brock Bowers.